What if your entire life savings could literally rot, starve, or die before your eyes? What if money simply didn't exist? 7,000 years ago, this wasn't a nightmare. It was reality. You've just walked 3 agonizing days through the wilderness. Your family is starving. You are dragging your most prized possession, a massive, healthy ox. You think you're wealthy. You are wrong. You find the grain merchant. He has the barley your children need to survive the winter. You offer him the ox. He refuses. Why? Because he already has 3 oxen. He has no grass left to feed a 4th. He tells you he needs a copper axe to repair his leaking storehouse. So you run to the blacksmith. You offer him the ox for an axe. He refuses too. The blacksmith doesn't eat meat. He has no use for the hide. What he actually needs is a carpenter to rebuild his roof. Think about the stakes here. Your family cannot eat, and yet you are surrounded by food. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. It is the fundamental flaw that nearly broke human civilization before it even began. In a world without money, you don't just need to find someone who has what you want. You have to find someone who has what you want and wants exactly what you have at the exact same second. If you fail, look at your asset. Your living, breathing wealth becomes a massive liability. It eats scarce food, it gets sick, it dies. And just like that, your life savings is nothing but a pile of rotting meat. To understand how we escape this trap, you have to look at what early humans faced. The physics of failure. In the Stone Age, wealth was strictly biological. If you were an elite hunter, your wealth was meat. If you were a master farmer, your wealth was grain. But biological wealth has a brutal expiration date. Let's bring this into modern terms. Imagine waking up tomorrow and checking your banking app, only to see your balance dropping by 5% every single hour. Not because of taxes, not because of spending, but because your money is literally rotting in a digital vault. That was the ancient reality. You couldn't save for a rainy day. You couldn't build an inheritance. You couldn't invest. You were trapped in a brutal daily cycle of immediate consumption. Feast or starve. But the nightmare didn't stop at rot. Barter had a massive portability problem. Let's say you finally find a merchant who wants your ox and has your grain. Perfect, right? Except he lives 50 miles away, over a jagged mountain range. An ox can walk, but what if your wealth isn't livestock? What if your wealth is half a ton of raw salt? Or 500 fragile hand-woven clay pots? The energy required just to move your wealth to the market was higher than the value of the trade itself. Humans were physically imprisoned by what their spines could bear. And finally, the divisibility crisis. You want a single loaf of bread to get through the afternoon. All you own is a live cow. You cannot trade half a living cow for a slice of bread. If you slaughter the cow to trade a single steak, the rest of the animal begins to decay immediately. You have just destroyed your entire capital asset just to buy a snack. Every single day, human progress hit a concrete wall. We were desperate. We were starving. We needed a miracle. We needed a third thing. The solution didn't come from a genius king. It didn't come from a government. It came from the dirt, and it came from the sea. Humans stopped looking for things that were useful and started looking for things that were completely useless, but perfect. Objects you couldn't eat. Objects you couldn't use to hunt, but objects that could outlive an empire. Picture a lone trader diving into the warm waters of the Indian Ocean, sweeping away the sand to find a tiny, porcelain-white cowrie shell. 1,100 years before Christ, this miniature marvel became humanity's ultimate superpower. It became the world's very first global currency, effortlessly conquering every single physics problem that broke the ox. It was indestructible. Drop it in the mud, bury it in the dirt, stomp on it with a leather boot. It will never rot. It was hyper-portable. A single traveler could carry the equivalent value of 10 massive, back-breaking oxen tucked inside a small leather pouch tied around his waist. It was perfectly divisible. 1 shell bought a handful of sweet fruit. 10 shells bought a gleaming steel dagger. 1,000 shells bought a sprawling plot of land. Now expand the lens. Watch the trade routes ignite across the globe. Follow the camel caravans marching through the scorching, shifting sands of the Sahara, trading massive, heavy blocks of salt like blocks of pure gold. Deep in the misty, canopy-choked jungles of Central America, Mayan merchants are counting out individual cacao beans to buy jade. High in the freezing, pine-scented wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, indigenous hunters are trading rare otter pelts to secure their borders. These were the world's first commodity currencies, the ultimate psychological bridge. Suddenly, a farmer didn't care if the merchant wanted his corn. He just traded his corn for shells or seeds or salt. Because he had absolute, unwavering certainty that every other human on Earth wanted them too. But the illusion of perfect money didn't last long. A new, terrifying ghost entered the market: inflation. Imagine your entire village uses salt as money. You've worked 40 years, breaking your back to amass a fortune. Then, a massive storm hits, the roof leaks, and your life savings literally melts into the floorboards, draining into the earth. Or worse, imagine you trade using cowrie shells. You are the richest man in the tribe. Suddenly, a foreign traveler discovers a hidden beach just 3 miles away, overflowing with billions of identical shells. He packs them into massive burlap sacks, walks into your market, and buys everything in sight. In a single afternoon, the value of your shells plummets to zero. You did nothing wrong, you worked hard, but your wealth evaporated because your money lacked one critical trait: scarcity. Our ancestors stumbled upon a profound, world-altering truth. For money to work, it couldn't just be durable and portable. It had to be incredibly hard to find. Look closely at what happened in those ancient markets. Our ancestors didn't just invent a trading tool. They engineered a staggering breakthrough in human consciousness. They realized a truth that still bends reality today. Money is not a physical thing. Money is an information system. A cowrie shell never possessed intrinsic value. It was valuable for one reason, and one reason only. It was a physical receipt of human effort. It was proof written in porcelain that you did something useful for the tribe. The moment humanity stepped away from barter, we did something truly revolutionary. We detached value from the physical world and anchored it entirely to human trust. When you glance at your banking app today, when you tap your phone to pay for a coffee, or when you watch digital numbers shift silently across a glowing screen, you are playing the exact same psychological game as the Neolithic tribesmen. You are using a tool designed to slay the monster of the double coincidence of wants. The barter system didn't end because humans got smarter. It ended because our world grew too massive to fit in a single human memory. The shell pouch was our first attempt to build a global ledger. But as simple tribes began to swell into massive, warring empires, shells and salt were no longer enough to hold the weight of human ambition. We needed something stronger, something forged in absolute fire, something that the gods themselves were made of. In our next episode, we leave the coastlines behind. We step inside the heavily guarded, shadow-drenched temples of ancient Mesopotamia. There, we will witness the birth of the world's first sacred debts, written on clay, and the terrifying moment a king's face was stamped onto a gold coin, changing the face of human warfare forever. Make sure to hit subscribe. You don't want to miss how the trap was truly built.